Imagine this. You're sitting alone in your apartment at 2 a.m., staring at the last text she ever sent you. I just need space. Your chest feels hollow. You replay every fight, every jealous question, every time you tried to fix her mood. She was once crazy about you. Now she's gone. What if I told you the secret to keeping a woman loyal isn't about grand gestures, expensive gifts, or even game? What if the real answer was written 2,000 years ago by Roman emperors, slaves, and generals who never even met your girlfriend? This is not another pickup artist script. This is a story, a real, raw, cinematic journey of one man who lost everything and then discovered Stoicism. Welcome, How to Treat a Woman So She Never Wants to Leave. Grab your coffee. This is going to be long, deep, and life-changing. If you stay till the end, you'll never see relationships the same way again. Chapter 1. The Fall. Ethan Reynolds was 34, successful, and completely broken. He owned a thriving digital marketing agency in Chicago. He drove a black Tesla. He had 47,000 Instagram followers who thought his life was perfect. But every night he came home to an empty bed because Sarah had left 3 weeks earlier. The final fight still echoed in his head. "You're suffocating me, Ethan," she had screamed, tears streaming down her face. "You check my phone. You get mad when I go out with friends. You need me to text you every hour. I love you, but I can't breathe anymore." He had begged, he had cried, he had promised to change. She packed a bag and left anyway. That night, Ethan did what most men do. He drank too much and opened his laptop. He searched how to make her come back. He found the usual garbage: be alpha, neg her, make her jealous. None of it felt right. Then, buried in the search results, he found an old Reddit thread titled "Stoicism Saved My Marriage." The top comment was a single quote from Marcus Aurelius. "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Ethan laughed bitterly. Philosophy, really? But he was desperate. He bought Meditations, Letters from a Stoic, and the Enchiridion. He started reading at 3 a.m. By sunrise, he was still reading, eyes red, mind racing. For the first time in years, he felt something other than panic, a tiny spark of control. Chapter 2. The Mentor Who Never Existed. Ethan couldn't sleep for days. He started running at 5 a.m. every morning, something he hadn't done since college. On the third morning, he stopped at a small park bench to catch his breath. An old man in a worn wool coat was already sitting there, reading a battered paperback. The cover read, "The Daily Stoic." The old man looked up and smiled, as if he had been waiting for Ethan. "Rough night, son?" Ethan, usually guarded, found himself pouring everything out: the fights, the jealousy, the emptiness. The old man listened without interrupting. When Ethan finally stopped, the stranger said only 4 words: "You were treating her like a possession." He introduced himself as Lucius, no last name. "Retired philosophy professor," he said. They talked for 2 hours. Lucius didn't give pickup lines. He gave principles. Stoicism doesn't teach you how to control women. It teaches you how to control yourself. And when a man becomes unshakable, the right woman stays because she wants to, not because she has to. Lucius handed Ethan a small leather notebook. "Write 1 thing every day you can control and 1 thing you cannot. Then live accordingly." That notebook became Ethan's Bible. Chapter 3. The 4 Stoic Virtues Applied to Love. Wisdom, seeing reality clearly. Ethan learned the first virtue the hard way. He had always interpreted Sarah's silence as anger toward him. Wisdom taught him her mood is not about you. He started practicing the dichotomy of control. Every time he felt the urge to text, "Where are you?" he wrote in the notebook, "I control my actions. I do not control her location or feelings." Then he would go for a walk instead. 1 month later, Sarah unexpectedly texted, "Can we talk?" They met at their favorite cafe. He didn't beg. He didn't promise to change. He simply said, "I've been reading a lot. I realized I was trying to own your happiness instead of sharing mine. I'm sorry." Sarah's eyes widened. For the first time in years, she saw calm in his face instead of desperation. Courage, facing the fear of loss. Lucius challenged him. "Imagine she never comes back. Can you still wake up grateful tomorrow?" Ethan did the Stoic exercise of negative visualization every night. He pictured waking up to an empty apartment forever. At first it crushed him. Then something shifted. He realized he could survive. The fear of losing her lost its power. When Sarah said she was dating someone casually, Ethan felt the old jealousy rise. Then he breathed and answered, "I want you to be happy, even if it's not with me." His voice didn't shake. Sarah later told her best friend, "He sounded free, and that scared me more than anything." Justice, treating her as an equal soul. Stoics believed every human being carries a divine spark. Ethan started treating Sarah like a fellow rational being instead of an emotional support doll. He stopped finishing her sentences. He stopped assuming he knew what she needed. He asked questions and actually listened to the answers. One evening she called crying about work stress. Old Ethan would have rushed over with solutions. New Ethan simply said, "That sounds incredibly heavy. I'm here if you want to vent, or I can just sit with you in silence." She chose silence. They sat on the phone for 20 minutes, saying nothing. She fell asleep on the call. He stayed on the line until morning. She woke up and whispered, "Thank you for not trying to fix me." Temperance, mastering your own desires. This was the hardest. Ethan had used the relationship to fill his own voids, validation, ego, physical need. Temperance meant learning to want her without needing her. He started a 30-day no-complaint streak about anything in the relationship. He focused on becoming the man he would respect if he met himself on the street. He hit the gym harder. He read more. He built a life so rich that even if Sarah never returned, he would still be proud of who he was. Ironically, the less he chased, the more she leaned in. Chapter 4. The Daily Practices That Rebuilt Their Love. Ethan turned Stoicism into a relationship operating system. Morning ritual, 15 minutes. Read one Stoic quote out loud. Write 3 things he was grateful for about Sarah, even when they were apart. Visualize himself responding with virtue no matter what the day brought. The evening review. Every night he asked himself, "Did I act with wisdom today? Was I courageous in facing my fears? Did I treat her and myself with justice? Did I exercise temperance?" If he failed, he wrote why and how he would do better tomorrow. No self-pity, just improvement. The Amor Fati text. Whenever Sarah sent a difficult message, Ethan would pause and whisper, "Amor Fati, love of fate," before replying. It stopped him from reacting emotionally. His responses became measured, kind, and strong. The dinner experiment. When they started seeing each other again, Ethan insisted on one rule: no phones at dinner. They talked about philosophy, dreams, fears. He told her the full story of Lucius and the notebook. She cried, not from sadness, but from relief. She said, "I feel like I'm dating a different man, a man who's finally at peace with himself." Chapter 5. The Storm That Tested Everything. 6 months in, life threw a real test. Sarah lost her job. Her mother got sick. She spiraled into depression. Old Ethan would have panicked, tried to rescue her, and eventually resented the burden. New Ethan showed up differently.
He brought groceries without being asked. He sat with her in silence when she couldn't speak. When she lashed out from pain, he didn't take it personally. He simply said, "I'm here. This too shall pass." One night she looked at him with exhausted eyes and asked, "Why are you still here when I'm like this?" Ethan smiled softly. "Because my peace doesn't depend on your mood. I love you, not the version of you that's always happy." That's Stoicism. She moved back in the next week. Chapter 6. The Unshakable Man, How Loyalty Becomes Inevitable. 2 years later, Ethan and Sarah are married, not because he tricked her or became high value in some gimmicky way, but because he became a man who no longer needed her loyalty to feel whole. He still keeps the leather notebook. It's now filled with over 700 entries. Lucius disappeared as mysteriously as he appeared. Ethan sometimes wonders if the old man was real or a creation of his own desperate mind. It doesn't matter. The philosophy was real. The final lesson Ethan learned, and the one I want you to burn into your soul, is this. A woman stays loyal to a man who has already proven he can stand alone. She doesn't stay because you watch her every move. She stays because your life is so full of purpose, virtue, and inner peace that leaving would feel like walking away from the sun. Stoicism doesn't make you a doormat. It makes you a mountain. And mountains don't chase rivers. Rivers flow toward them. Become unshakable. The loyalty will follow. If this story moved you, drop a comment with the word Stoic, and I'll send you the free 30-day Stoic Relationship Journal PDF. Like, subscribe, share this with every man who needs to hear it. Because the world doesn't need more players. It needs more Stoics in love. I'll see you in the next chapter of your life. Until then, stay strong, stay virtuous, and remember, you already have everything you need inside you. The 4 Stoic virtues applied to love, becoming the man she chooses to stay with. Ethan sat on the park bench again, the leather notebook open on his lap. Lucius was late today, or maybe he wasn't coming at all. The old man had a way of appearing exactly when Ethan needed him most. As rain began to patter on the leaves overhead, Ethan flipped through his early entries. Most were raw and desperate. I can't control whether she texts back. I can control whether I spiral into jealousy. Lucius finally arrived, shaking water from his coat. He didn't greet Ethan with small talk. Instead, he pointed at the notebook. Today we go deeper, son. The 4 virtues aren't just slogans for gym posters. They are the operating system for a good life and for a love that lasts. Most men treat women like puzzles to solve or prizes to win. A Stoic treats love as the ultimate arena to practice wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance. When you do that, loyalty stops being something you demand. It becomes something she freely gives, because being with you feels like coming home to her own best self. Ethan leaned in. "Show me." Lucius smiled. "Let's begin with the foundation. Wisdom, phronesis, seeing her, yourself, and the relationship clearly. Wisdom, the Stoics taught, is the knowledge of what is truly good, what is truly bad, and what is indifferent. In love, this is everything. Ethan had spent years confusing her happiness with something he could control. If Sarah was quiet, he assumed he had done something wrong. If she wanted a night with friends, he felt abandoned. Wisdom shattered that illusion. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Applied to relationships, it means her emotions, her choices, her past, her future desires. These are not up to you. Your judgments about them are. Ethan started a daily practice, the premeditatio malorum of the relationship. Every morning he would ask himself 3 questions. What could go wrong today in our connection, and how will I respond with virtue instead of reaction? What story am I telling myself about her behavior right now? Is it true, or is it my fear speaking? What is actually within my control? My words, my tone, my effort, my own growth. One evening, Sarah called, frustrated after a long day. Old Ethan would have jumped in with solutions or defensive explanations. New Ethan listened and then said calmly, "I hear how heavy today felt. I'm not going to try to fix it unless you ask me to. I'm just here." Sarah paused. "That's new. Thank you. I don't need fixing. I just needed to be heard without being managed." Wisdom also meant seeing Sarah as a full human being, not a supporting character in his story. He stopped idealizing her as the one who completes me and started appreciating her as a fellow rational soul navigating her own storms. Practical exercise Ethan adopted: the view from above. When jealousy or insecurity hit, he imagined the two of them as tiny figures on a vast planet spinning through space. Their argument about who forgot to buy milk suddenly felt small. Perspective returned. He could respond with clarity instead of panic. In love, wisdom keeps you from the twin traps of pedestalizing her, which breeds resentment when she inevitably falls, or demonizing her, which poisons trust. A wise man loves realistically, fully, but without delusion. Courage, Andreia, facing the fear of loss and the vulnerability of real intimacy. Courage isn't the absence of fear, it's acting rightly in spite of it. In relationships, the biggest fear is usually loss, of her affection, of the relationship, of your own sense of self if she leaves. Lucius challenged Ethan brutally one day. "Close your eyes and picture the worst. She meets someone else, she leaves, you come home to silence every night. Can you still choose to be a good man tomorrow morning?" At first, the visualization crushed him. His chest tightened, tears came, but he kept doing it, night after night. Slowly, the panic lost its grip. He realized he could survive, more than survive. He could thrive if he kept his virtues intact. Epictetus warned, "It's not things that upset us, but our opinions about them." His opinion was, "I am nothing without her loyalty." Courage rewrote that opinion to, "I am whole regardless of her choice." When Sarah later confessed that she had been on a few dates during their separation, the old Ethan would have exploded or begged. The courageous Ethan felt the sting, then breathed through it. He replied, "Thank you for telling me the truth. That took guts. I won't pretend it doesn't hurt, but I respect your honesty. I want whatever's best for you, even if it's painful for me right now." Sarah later told him that moment was the first time she felt safe being completely honest with him. His courage created space for her truth without punishment. Courage in love also means the bravery to be vulnerable, to say, "I was wrong" first, to admit insecurities without making them her problem to solve, to commit fully, knowing nothing is guaranteed. Another practice, voluntary discomfort. Ethan deliberately spent evenings alone without texting her, building the muscle of independence. He went on solo hikes. He pursued his own goals harder. The less he needed her constant reassurance, the more freely she gave it. A Stoic lover is not fearless, he is fear-facing. He risks rejection, misunderstanding, and heartbreak, not because he is reckless, but because a life without deep connection, lived virtuously, is still worth living. Justice, dikaiosune, treating her as an equal rational being, not a means to your happiness. Of all the virtues, Marcus Aurelius considered justice the greatest, the source of the others. In love, justice means giving her what she is due, respect, honesty, fairness, kindness, and space to be fully herself. Ethan had been unjust for years. He had treated Sarah's time, attention, and emotions as resources he was entitled to. He got angry when she set boundaries. He sulked when she prioritized her career. Justice demanded a radical shift. He started asking, "Am I acting toward her as I would want a good person to act toward someone I love?" Justice meant listening without interrupting to correct her feelings. It meant celebrating her wins, even when they didn't directly benefit him. It meant being faithful not just physically, but emotionally, not flirting with others for ego validation, not keeping score of who did more chores. One weekend, Sarah wanted to visit her family alone. Old Ethan would have guilt-tripped her. Just Ethan said, "Go, enjoy them. I'll use the time to work on my own projects. Bring me back a story or two." When she returned, glowing and relaxed, she hugged him tighter than usual. "You didn't make me feel guilty. That means everything." Justice also includes self-justice. You cannot treat her fairly if you treat yourself like trash. Ethan began eating better, exercising consistently, and pursuing meaningful work, not to impress her, but because it was the just thing to do for his own character. In Stoic terms, justice extends philanthropia, goodwill toward all humanity. In a relationship, that goodwill.
When physical desire felt overwhelming or mismatched, he channeled the energy into his own discipline, workouts, creative projects, cold showers. The irony? The more he mastered himself, the more magnetic he became to her. Temperance also meant moderation in grand gestures. Flowers and dates were fine, but not if they came from a place of buying loyalty. True temperance is steady presence over dramatic displays. Sarah noticed the change most here. "You want me, but you don't need me to feel okay. That makes me want to be closer to you." In the words of modern interpreters of Stoicism, temperance in love means enjoying the highs without being destroyed by the lows, and giving affection without keeping score. How the virtues work together, the unshakable lover. The beauty of Stoicism is that the virtues are interdependent. Wisdom informs courage. Courage strengthens justice. Justice requires temperance. Together, they create a man who is attractive not because he plays games, but because he is rare, steady, deep, self-possessed. Ethan's journal entry after 2 months captured it. "Today, I didn't react when she canceled plans. I wished her well and used the evening productively. I felt the old fear rise, and I chose virtue instead. For the first time, keeping her doesn't feel like my life's mission. Becoming the best version of myself does. And strangely, she seems happier than ever." Lucius nodded when Ethan read it aloud. "That's it. You stopped trying to keep her loyal. You started becoming the kind of man a loyal woman is proud to stand beside." The old man leaned back. "Remember, a woman doesn't stay because you control her. She stays because your example of virtue inspires her to bring her best self too. Love under Stoicism isn't possession. It's two independent souls choosing to walk the same path for as long as fate allows." Ethan closed the notebook. The rain had stopped. For the first time in years, the weight on his chest felt lighter. Not because Sarah had promised forever, but because he no longer needed that promise to feel whole. This expanded chapter stands alone as powerful content while flowing directly into the rest of your original script, the daily practices, the storm, and the conclusion. It weaves in authentic Stoic quotes and ideas, Marcus on control and justice, Epictetus on opinions and slavery to passions, Seneca on living according to nature, Amor Fati. It adds concrete exercises, real-sounding dialogues, and emotional arcs that keep viewers hooked. Stoic virtues in parenting, raising children who become their own mountains. Months had passed since Ethan and Sarah reconciled. Their love felt steadier now, rooted in the 4 virtues that had saved their relationship. But life, as it always does, had another arena waiting. One crisp autumn evening, Sarah placed a positive pregnancy test on the kitchen counter. Ethan stared at the 2 pink lines, heart pounding with a mix of joy and terror. He had spent years not to need Sarah's constant reassurance, but now a new fear gripped him. What kind of father would he be? That night he couldn't sleep. He opened his leather notebook and wrote, "I control my example. I do not control who my child becomes." The next morning he found Lucius at the park bench again, as if the old man had sensed the shift. Lucius didn't offer congratulations. He simply said, "Parenting is the ultimate Stoic gymnasium. Every tantrum, every sleepless night, every proud moment is an opportunity to practice wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance, not just for you, but to model them for the next generation." Ethan asked the question every new parent wrestles with. How do I raise a child who is resilient, kind, and free without suffocating them or spoiling them? Lucius leaned forward. You don't raise them to be loyal to you. You raise them to be loyal to virtue. The same 4 cardinal virtues that made you unshakable in love will guide you in fatherhood. Let's walk through them. Wisdom, phronesis, seeing clearly what matters most in raising a child. Wisdom in parenting begins with the Stoic dichotomy of control applied ruthlessly to family life. You cannot control whether your child gets sick, fails a test, gets bullied, or chooses the wrong friends. You cannot force them to love the same books, sports, or career path you value. But you can control the environment you create, the example you set, and how you respond when things go off script. Ethan learned this early. When their daughter, little Aurelia, named after Marcus Aurelius, was 2 and threw epic tantrums over bedtime, old Ethan would have yelled, bargained, or given in from exhaustion. New Ethan paused and asked, "What story am I telling myself right now? That her crying means I'm a bad father, or that this is simply a small human learning to regulate big feelings?" He started an evening review for parents. What did I model today with wisdom? Did I distinguish between what I can shape, my patience, the household routines, and what I cannot, her emotions in the moment? How can I respond tomorrow with clearer judgment? As Aurelia grew older, Ethan used wisdom to teach the same tool. When she came home crying because a friend excluded her at school, he didn't rush to fix it by calling the other parents. Instead, he sat with her and said gently, "Sweetheart, other people's choices are not up to you, but how you treat yourself and others, that is. What would a wise person do right now?" Marcus Aurelius reminded himself constantly to focus on what is essential. In parenting, wisdom means saying no to the endless pressure of bake sales, extracurricular overload, and social media comparisons. It means protecting family time and teaching children that a good life is not measured by trophies or likes, but by character. Practical exercise Ethan adopted: the view from above with your child. On tough days, he would imagine the entire family as tiny figures on a spinning planet. The meltdown over broccoli suddenly felt smaller. Perspective returned, and he could respond with calm clarity instead of reactive frustration. Wisdom also meant accepting that children are not extensions of your ego. They are fellow rational beings in training with their own paths. Your job is to guide, not sculpt them into many versions of yourself. Courage, Andrea, facing the fear of harm, failure, and letting go. Courage in parenting is not about being fearless. It is about doing what is right, even when your heart is screaming in terror. Stoics practiced negative visualization deliberately. Epictetus advised parents to whisper while kissing their child goodnight. He may be dead in the morning, not to induce anxiety, but to prepare the mind and cherish the present moment more deeply. Marcus lost several children. He knew life's fragility firsthand. Ethan did the exercise one night while rocking infant Aurelia. The fear hit hard: illness, accidents, future heartbreaks. But repeating it built resilience. He realized, I can love her fiercely without letting fear make me controlling or overprotective. When Aurelia was 5 and wanted to climb the big playground structure alone, old Ethan would have hovered, warned, or lifted her himself. Courageous Ethan stepped back while staying close enough to catch her if needed, and said, "You've got this. If you fall, I'll be here, but I believe you can try." She fell. She cried. He comforted her without saying, "I told you so." Then he asked, "What did you learn?" That small act of courage, allowing calculated risk, built her confidence far more than constant safety ever would. Courage also means facing your own mistakes publicly. When Ethan lost his temper and raised his voice one exhausting evening, he didn't make excuses. He knelt down, looked Aurelia in the eyes, and said, "Daddy was wrong to yell. That wasn't courageous or kind. I'm working on it. Will you forgive me?" Modeling the courage to admit fault taught her more than any lecture on honesty ever would. In the teenage years, which were still ahead, Ethan knew courage would mean letting her make choices he disagreed with, dating, career paths, friendships, while still offering guidance without ultimatums. True courage in parenting is trusting that the virtues you've modeled will help them navigate storms you cannot shield them from. Justice, Seneca, treating your child with fairness, kindness, and respect as a fellow human. Justice is often called the greatest Stoic virtue because it governs our relationships with others. In parenting, it means seeing your child not as property or a project, but as a rational soul deserving of dignity, fairness, and goodwill.
Ethan had to unlearn the common trap, treating kids as reflections of parental success or failures. Justice demanded he praise effort and character over outcomes. When Aurelia brought home a drawing instead of a perfect report card, he celebrated her creativity and persistence, not just the grade. Seneca and Marcus emphasized kindness and empathy. No one does wrong on purpose. They act from misinterpreted beliefs about what is good. When Aurelia lied about finishing her chores, he didn't punish in anger. He asked calmly, what made telling the truth feel scary in that moment? Then he explained how trust is built through honesty, without shaming her.
Justice also meant fairness in discipline. Consistent rules applied with mercy, never favoritism or arbitrary punishment. It meant modeling respect, listening fully when she spoke, not interrupting, not dismissing her feelings as just a kid thing. One powerful practice, role reversal questions. Ethan would occasionally ask, if you were the parent and I was the child, how would you want me to handle this situation? It built empathy on both sides and reinforced that justice flows both ways. As a family, they practiced philanthropia, goodwill toward all, volunteering together, helping neighbors, discussing current events through the lens of fairness. Justice in parenting isn't just about rules inside the home. It's raising citizens of the world who treat others with decency. Sarah noticed the shift most during family conflicts. You treat her like a person, not a mini-adult you need to perfect. She feels safe to be herself. Temperance, sophrasne, mastering your own reactions and desires as a parent. Temperance, self-control, and moderation is where many parents struggle most. The desire to overprotect, overindulge, or live vicariously through your children can be overwhelming. Ethan's biggest test came during Aurelia's terrible threes. Sleepless nights tested his patience. The urge to scroll on his phone for escape or snap in frustration was strong. Temperance meant pausing, breathing, and choosing presence over reactivity. He built simple habits: no screens during family meals, full attention on each other. Modeling delayed gratification, saving for family trips instead of impulse buys. Channeling parental energy productively. When tempted to hover, he would read Stoic passages or journal instead. Temperance also meant moderation in praise and criticism. Modern parents often overpraise outcomes. You're so smart. Stoics praise the process and virtue. I saw how hard you worked and how you didn't give up. That shows real courage. This builds intrinsic motivation rather than fragile egos. When Aurelia wanted every toy she saw advertised, Ethan practiced temperance by saying no with kindness and explaining why. We don't need everything to be happy. Let's focus on what truly matters. He then redirected her toward creative play or helping with a household task. Seneca reminded us that time is the one thing we truly own. Temperance in parenting means protecting family time from unnecessary busyness, saying no to extra activities so there is space for deep connection, quiet evenings, and simply being together. The beautiful paradox: the more Ethan mastered his own impulses, the calmer the household became. Aurelia naturally began imitating his steadiness. How the four virtues work together in family life. The virtues are not separate checkboxes. They form a living system. Wisdom informs when to step in and when to step back. Courage gives you the strength to let your child struggle and grow. Justice ensures your guidance comes from love and fairness, not ego. Temperance keeps you from burning out or overreacting. Ethan started a simple family ritual. Once a week at dinner, each person shared one way they tried to live a virtue that week. Even Aurelia, at age 4, could say, "I was brave when I tried the new food." It turned abstract philosophy into lived family culture. Lucius summed it up one rainy afternoon. You are not raising a perfect child. You are raising a human being who will face the same indifferent universe we all do.
Your greatest gift is not shielding them from hardship, but equipping them with the inner tools, the virtues, to meet it with grace. Do that, and whether they stay close to you or forge their own path, they will carry your example like a quiet strength. Years later, when Aurelia was a teenager facing her own challenges, she told her father, "You never tried to control who I became. You just showed me how to become someone good. That made all the difference." Ethan smiled, notebook in hand, now filled with entries spanning love and fatherhood. The mountain he had become was casting a steady shadow, one his daughter could choose to stand in or climb beyond. Parenting under Stoicism is not about raising loyal children who never leave. It is about raising free, virtuous souls who know how to navigate life with wisdom, face it with courage, treat others with justice, and master themselves with temperance. That is the ultimate legacy. Deep dive, temperance, sophrosne, mastering desire, impulse, and the urge to cling, so love and family endure. Ethan stood in the kitchen at 11:47 p.m., phone in hand, thumb hovering over Sarah's last text. She had gone to bed early after a long day with toddler Aurelia. The old urge rose like a wave. Just one more message. Check if she's okay. Tell her I love her again. He felt the familiar pull, the need to fill the quiet with connection, reassurance, distraction. His heart raced, his mind whispered justifications. Instead, he set the phone face down, took a slow breath, and whispered Seneca's words he had written in his notebook weeks earlier. Pleasures, when they go beyond a certain limit, are but punishments. He walked to the window. Rain tapped softly against the glass. For the first time, he didn't fight the discomfort of silence. He sat with it. And in that small act of restraint, something shifted. He felt lighter, freer, more himself. The next morning, on the park bench, Lucius noticed the change immediately. The old man smiled faintly. "Temperance," he said, without preamble. "You're finally tasting it." Most men think self-control is cold denial. The Stoics knew better. Sophrosne, temperance, is the art of knowing enough. It is the guardian of the other virtues. Without it, wisdom becomes overthinking, courage becomes recklessness, and justice becomes self-righteous anger. In love and parenting, temperance is what keeps the fire warm without burning the house down. Ethan opened his notebook. Show me the practices, real ones, the kind that actually stick when a toddler is screaming, when jealousy flares, or when the bed feels too empty. Lucius nodded. Let's walk through them, not as theory, but as daily training. Temperance is a muscle. You build it one deliberate choice at a time. 1. The pause rule, creating space between impulse and action. Epictetus taught that we are disturbed not by things, but by our opinions and rushed reactions to them. Temperance begins with the sacred pause. Ethan adopted the 6-second rule, or 10 slow breaths when 6 wasn't enough. Whenever a strong desire hit, to text Sarah excessively, to snap at Aurelia during a tantrum, to scroll endlessly for distraction, or to demand reassurance, he forced himself to count. One evening, Aurelia refused bedtime for the 5th time, pleading just one more story. Old Ethan would have caved from exhaustion or raised his voice. New Ethan felt the irritation rise, then paused. He breathed. In that gap, wisdom appeared. This is not an emergency. She is testing boundaries because she is 3. My job is to hold the line with kindness, not to win the moment. He said calmly, "We agreed on 2 stories tonight. Tomorrow we can choose more. I love you. Time for sleep." He tucked her in without negotiation. She protested for 2 minutes, then drifted off. The household stayed peaceful. Ethan later wrote in his journal, "The pause didn't suppress my feeling. It freed me from being ruled by it."